everyone, welcome to the Barefoot Maiden. Please pardon the messy bun, it's just been that kind of day. Today we're going to be making an apple pie cake inspired by this picture that I saw on Instagram. So we're going to be trying to recreate it, but instead of being cupcakes, it's going to be cake. We're going to use cream cheese frosting, a regular box cake mix, but adding some spices, and then we're going to be stewing down some apples and then layering them on top. So let's get started. So the first two things I'm going to do is one, preheat my oven so that it can stay hot, since I'm going to be doing 2 rounds of cake, since my cake mix will make more than my pan can hold. And 2 is cut my apple. Boom, all done. So my pot is already hot. I'm going to go ahead and get some water and sugar in these. Okay, so I added about 4 cups of water and all the brown sugar I had left. I'm not exactly sure how much that was. So now we're just gonna let those simmer and cook as long as they want. I am gonna add some cinnamon to this mixture, and maybe a tiny bit of nutmeg. And then we're just gonna let those simmer and we're gonna get started on the cake. Again, added the cinnamon, added the nutmeg. I'm just gonna let that simmer for a while. I did all the apples I had, which is about 8 to 9. These were some old apples my mom had. So they were already really soft, so they're gonna soften very quickly. But this is a big pot on a small burner because I'm also simultaneously gonna start my dinner, which is chili, on this burner. So we'll just see how long this takes. That's why I went ahead and started this. I also don't know how much I'm gonna need because of the fact I'm doing 2 cakes, so I'm not sure how much I'm gonna need on top. So we're just gonna boil these down until they're mush and we'll see if it fits. Added my wet ingredients and threw in like a large splash of vanilla. If you wanna make this extra fancy, instead of vegetable oil, I used olive oil, but instead of vegetable oil, you could use butter, and instead of water, you could use milk. I feel like there's going to be enough flavor on this as it is, and I'm a little low on some of those ingredients, so I just decided to go with the typical, but you could make it a little extra fancy. I'm also going to throw cinnamon and nutmeg in this. I know they make spiced cakes, but I had already been to the grocery store and forgot to get one, and I already had this cake mix, so we're just going to use this cake mix. Oh goodness, it's not going to break it. So we're just going to use this cake mix and add a little extra something to it. Okay, nutmeg, vanilla, and cinnamon being added to the cake, but I'm leaving them out because they're still not done. They've been in everything so far, and they're still gonna be in the icing. All right, so I've oiled my pan, and I have half of the spice cake mixture in here and half of it in here. So I'm gonna go ahead and cook my first one, bake my first one, and then as soon as this comes out, I'll pour in the next half. I'm gonna go ahead and get this out of my mixer though, so I can get started on the frosting so that everything can be done and waiting on the apples when these are cooling. Okay, cream cheese, butter mixed together. I'm putting in 4 cups of powdered sugar, and then cinnamon, nutmeg, and vanilla. Okay, so I finished the icing, ended up adding some more powdered sugar to make it thicker so that it will stand up firm around the edges. Have it in one bag, and I'm filling a second bag, and then I'm gonna stick it in the fridge with the first cake that came out of the oven. I'm telling you, I've never had a cake slide out of a pan more perfectly than this one did. It was perfection. I love the shape and the size. It'll go perfectly with what is going on top of it. So this is chilling in the fridge. And when this second one over here gets out of the oven, it's also gonna go in the fridge. I think I am just going to chill everything and decorate tomorrow. Because I really want this to be cold, the cake to be cold, and that to be cold, because if any of it's warm, it's going to melt the icing, and it needs to be able to stand up around the edges. So I think I'm just going to wait till tomorrow to do all of this. So I'm just going to get it in the fridge. Okay, so it's the next morning, and I've pulled out both the cakes. I've cut a layer off the top, and I'm gonna cut down in just a little bit, not the whole cake, that layer, but just enough to hold the juices in, a little bit around the edges. I've ladled in some of the juice from the apples, and now I'm going to put a drained scoop of the apples on top. So I'm draining some of that juice off, and we're going to put the apples here on top, and we're gonna layer them pretty thick around here so that it looks right. My cake decorating nozzles are actually a little on the small side, so I'm gonna have to do quite a lot of layers and rounds to make it thick enough. So that's why we're gonna make sure that the apple is plenty spread out here so that it looks nice and thick. So I'm gonna go ahead and do this to this one and the other one. Also, the apples
I put so much sugar in here, and they stewed down for so long. They're almost candied. They're not actually stewed anymore. They are just mush. They're the most delicious candied apples, which are fantastic on top of this cake. So let me get finished with this. Okay, so I really, really love how this turned out. That is so gorgeous. There are a couple of mistakes, but it's partly because my icing was a little bit cold. So this is kind of what it looks like. I'm going to do some lattice work across the top in a crisscross, and we're going to come back with my fluffy one, and we're going to put little frills around the outside edge. But I'm going to stop real quick and do this one because I've got this piping tip on right now. So we're going to wait to finish this one until I get this one even with it, and then I'll finish both with the last piping. Okay, so I finished doing the edge of the pie border around both of them. Now we're going to do the lattice in the middle. I have no words for just how perfect that turned out. The lattice really did just top it off perfectly. It now looks exactly like a pie cake. I love that so much. The camera is not doing it justice because the 3D that I can see with my eyes of just how pie shaped it looks is a little bit less in the camera. But I'm telling you, it is phenomenal. This is the one I'm taking with me. This was my test run for all the things I tried. So if I do this again, I think I would not do these. I would do the border out here bigger, and I would make these bigger. I think I would not do the swirls. I don't love how I did the swirls, but it looks amazing. This was definitely worth a try. I would so recommend doing this recipe. It is really fun if you love to bake because of the length of the process and that each part is just a little bit different. This is the first time I've ever baked a cake where, 1, I preheated my oven, 2, I put everything in the fridge to cool and decorated it when I actually had time to decorate it instead of immediately. 3, everything was the perfect consistency and the perfect temperature, so it didn't melt the icing. This is one of the more perfect scenarios of making cake I've ever done. It also is one of my first times using piping bags with tips. I've never really done that before, so that was a nice experience. So one of my favorite things about this cake is that this is the amount of icing I would have if I had just smeared it around the edges, but it's done pretty. So it's going to be the perfect amount of icing, the perfect amount of apple, and the perfect amount of cake with the juice from the apple poured inside. This cake is just phenomenal, and I cannot wait to dive into it. Thanks so much for watching my cake baking video. I hope you were inspired to make your own apple pie cake this season. Hope to see you next time. Bye!